So you're gonna show where you stretch all those people? So you're gonna show us the dungeon?
I might try to show a move or two.
Yeah. I'll take some moves, sir.
Do you feel that?
Oh yes, sir. I don't feel my arms, sir. I can feel it.
Can you feel that, sir?
Oh yes, sir.
Red,
oh yeah.
Rosy.
Yes, sir.
And by taking this arm back here, you just ease his hand in the position here. I got the power here to...
Stop it, sir. Stop.
You're listening to Hart Beat Radio.
Got a great show for you fans of Hart Beat Radio this afternoon. I'd like to introduce the co-host of our show from Portland Wrestling, Mr. Matt Merz.
I actually had the fortune of being an 8-year-old boy when Rocky Iaukea was portraying that cheating Arab, Buddha Dean, here in the Pacific Northwest. And so I have some questions for him for sure, and should be a very interesting show. I'm really excited to learn more about Hawaii, and I find it so interesting that both of the gentlemen who are on today also competed for Don Owen for a period of time. Rocky had a very good run working for Don, and but I know you started in 1981, Rocky. And where did you start? How did you get into the business? Because as everyone knows, your father is one of the most legendary wrestlers of the Pacific of all time, King Curtis Iaukea.
Well, thank you for bringing me back to 1981. I was just a young man at the time, and I started in Japan. And I went there for Mr. Inoki's company, the New Japan Pro Wrestling. And, of course, the promotion at that time here in Hawaii, my first match here in Hawaii was for the Maivias. Peter Maivia had passed on by then, but his wife Leah was running the show here. And so my first time in Hawaii was for the Maivias, and then really it was Japan that got me into the industry, though.
And that sounds like something pretty rare. I don't know if I've ever heard of another gaijin who got trained in Japan.
I think Pat Tanaka.
It was very few of us. I went to the dojo, the same dojo that years later the young man from Canada would go to. The young man who ended up as the rabid Wolverine, right? So he and I were
Chris
there.
Benoit, yeah.
Yeah, I was just there a few years before. I was there with the other guy from Canada. Who was that? Your judo champion there, Bad News Allen. He was just.
Bad News kind of started over there.
He started
a little
in the
earlier.
dojo as well. A little earlier than me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That was the Carl Gotch days and all that stuff there, right?
Yeah, I think my brother Smith was over there for about a year, and then I remember also Pat Tanaka was when I wrestled in Japan. He was one of the what they call them, the young boys or something like that, but they had a kind of a demeaning treatment of the young boys. Some of the old, austere Japanese types like Sakaguchi and Oki would kind of, glare at them like they were, peasants or slaves, and kind of they'd have to take out guys' shoes and bow down and all that stuff. But hopefully you didn't have to go through all that kind of.
Well, I did, and that's part of the thing. The Japanese not only do they train your body, but they train your mind as well.
Oh yeah, a lot of discipline, humility,
all discipline and respect, and working your way up the ladder, and they put a lot of emphasis on that. You know what? It helped to serve me throughout my life. Not only in my wrestling career, but for everything that I tackled after that. Japan was a big help to me all the way around.
And listen, Rocky and Bruce and Matt, I've made the connection here to Hawaii, and I'd like to welcome our other great guest on this afternoon, former WWF wrestler and WWE Hall of Famer, Mr. Don Muraco. And I remember Don when he was here in Calgary in 1989. Welcome to Hart Beat Radio, Mr. Don Muraco.
Hello, and good morning, guys.
How's everything going, Don?
Yeah, everything's fine. Just watching grandkids now.
none of your kin had any? They never got into the business in any way, or?
My son did for a while. Was up there with Alpha in Allentown, and he went to Japan also. He was there for about 8 weeks, setting up the ring and one of the young boys.
It's pretty humbling. I know my brother Smitty was down there for about a year back in the 70s doing that, and he said it was somewhat humbling. They don't cut you much slack there. Yeah.
Somewhat humbling that's an understatement that's the greatest understatement I've ever heard. Somewhat humbling. I love that.
Yeah. Japanese style, you know.
How was that with Alpha and all that, Don? I know Alpha and Sika broke in up here, I think back in 73 or somewhere in there. And
oh, yeah?
Yeah, they were up here for about 2 years. Alpha, and it seemed like my dad had every Samoan under the sun seemed to start up here from Nef Mayava, and they all had these...
I have another pipeline from Tally Ho.
Yeah, I was amazed at how many of them. They all had these exotic names like Alalulani and Tio and Tapu and all that kind of stuff. Reno Tafuli, and I remember it was like
I remember Reno from Florida. You know, Tally Ho was your mom and dad's best man at their wedding.
Back in New York, and he seemed to send them over a regular, just kind of a ongoing thing from as far back as Nef Mayava, and they were kind of an interesting bunch. They were all pretty mellow and all, and then every now and then you'd see them explode, and it was like
mellow, but tough sons of guns. All their ears looked like roadkill. There wasn't an ear between them. That whole group. It looked like a proctologist's dream.
Can I ask you, gentlemen, what was the relationship between Ed Francis and Lord Blears?
Ed Francis was the promoter. Tally Ho was the booker.
Okay.
And matchmaker, and worked. He was offered. He refused. He didn't want, for some reason, I don't know why. It was personal. He didn't want the responsibility of promoting and running. And he had a good thing going with Ricky Dozan and Japan, and then with Stu and you guys in Calgary. You know, Tally was a smart guy. Him and Curtis, they started with Ricky Dozan, King Curtis, Rocky's dad. They started way back when, so they had their foot in the door in All Japan Pro Wrestling before Inoki broke it off. Before everybody, that's how they were so connected in Japan. They came right from Ricky Dozan.
He was pretty connected. Tally Ho was good friends with Kovacs as well. Did that have anything to do with you going to Vancouver? And
everything. We was, I think I was house sitting or something. They had a place in the Ilokai, and anyway. Lee would have the soya chicken or spaghetti she would make, and everybody, and she had Sandra over. And Tally Ho goes, "What do you want to do? You want to be, you know?" And a couple weeks later, I was I didn't know a padlock from a hammerlock from a, and I was on the plane going to Vancouver.
Yeah, it's funny. My dad, when he broke in New York and with Toots Montt, he was rooming with Kovacs and Lord Blears or Jan Blears or whatever. Jan Blears, in New York, the three of them were kind of like wide-eyed rookie, and I think Lord Blears had been in some kind of a war hero. My dad said in the South Pacific. He's got a fabulous story.
Jumping off the submarine when they're blowing guys' brains out. And he bailed out with a couple guys. Yeah,
I remember hearing all the. He was regaling me with all the It sounded like pretty harrowing, like some kind of war movie.
That's why he's a lord. He's a real lord. He was actually knighted, and He floated around the middle Pacific Ocean for a couple of days till a Danish merchant ship picked him up, and I think he had one or two dead bodies. They were all shackled together.
I remember he was his kids. You probably knew them. Were all surfers and all like that, and you were interacted with them. I heard like Jimmy Blears and.
He was best man. He and I were best friends forever.
Yeah,
and,
they were about as Hawaiian as it gets, the Howleys or whatever.
They were big. They were big. They were like the Iaukea. They were a big, famous island family.
Well, one of the daughters surfed topless for Playboy magazine. I forget what year it was. I was a kid at the time. Don, you probably remember that better than me, but that was a big whoop-de-doo out here in the islands.
I remember Lord Blears sent my dad a copy of that magazine, and my mother was intrigued that he was, seemingly proud of bearing it all or something like that.
Well, that was a long time. I think the late 60s, early 70s. So that was
I remember my dad was showing it around read Playboy, but this is Lord Blair's daughter.
That was the first magazine I hid from my parents. With many more to follow.
Now, Mr. Muraco, I know you spent your first year in Vancouver and Portland, Oregon, and I know you had some experiences with Lonnie, Maine. Do you have any memories of Lonnie?
He was a good guy. He was on top. Well, he was taking these kind of bumps before these guys were taking these kind of bumps. He was like the Hardy Boys. He was. I remember one of my first experiences. They'd have the Tuesday main event down in Portland, and he was standing on the top rope of the ring. I remember that old bowling alley there that they used to work in, and he had somebody drop kick in the back, and he went from the top rope in the ring onto the floor. And that was, and he was a 300-pound guy. You remember how big, Lonnie was. But yeah, he was. He used to do those bumps before these guys. He was before Mick Foley and a lot of these guys. He was out there. He was eating glass. He said he came here. He's eating dog food and goldfish and biting the glasses and chewing the glass.
I think the payoffs at Slim when we were with Lee and Via, I think quite a few of the boys are considering eating dog food, but
the only thing he could never eat was the poi.
Yeah.
Well, Fuji was making tuna fish sandwiches regularly for the midgets with cat food. That was one of his PA's theories and stuff. Yeah, he was always passing out. Nobody ever ate anything. If you knew him, you never ate anything he gave you. Well, he's kind of in the Hall of Fame there in Calgary for the Rivers. So I know Calgary's got some.
Calgary was kind of
got some all-star. That's probably the start of the Hall of Fame.
Maple
for Rivers,
parties and Don Fargo's and it seems to be a steady stream of mischief.
He would easily be in that Hall of Fame. No problem.
I'm surprised my dad didn't get Fuji up here to orchestrate a Maple party or do some kind of. He would have fit in with all the Christie brothers and the Don Fargos and Dr. Jerry Grahams and all those guys,
The Christie brothers are supposed to be that's who Tally Ho was. That's who Tally Ho was. That was
they were almost
heroes.
to the point of being, they always had to keep topping themselves. And my dad told me he was driving with Ted Christie, and Ted Christie had this newspaper. I guess he would kind of slash some slits in it, but make out like he was reading the newspaper on the highway, and he'd be going about 90 miles an hour and look like he's reading the paper and staring through the slits and stuff like that.
But now, Rocky, I know you also spent a good 3 years up here in the Pacific Northwest wrestling with Rip Oliver and Mean Mike Miller and Dave Sierra and old Steve Dahl and Scott Peterson during that era. Do you have any memories of Portland, Oregon?
God, I had great memories up there, great memories. And, you know, speaking of David Sierra, we just honored him at the last Cauliflower Alley Club. And I got great memories of being up there. Don Owens was a great guy. It was a nice little territory up there, and I'm just very grateful to have spent time up there.
And how did you end up being a cheating Arab up here?
Well, I was working for the Grahams there in Florida, and Kevin Sullivan and Mark Lewin were the top heels there, and Sullivan was doing this Buddha Dean thing that he would consult, you know. So Mark Lewin actually gave me the Buddha Dean gimmick to take out west. I left Florida as the Prince, the Hawaiian Prince, and I showed up in Portland with my Buddha Dean thing that was right from Mark Lewin, my uncle, my godfather, my.
Those guys are in love with Butch.
It's kind of ironic that a Jewish guy's giving you an Arab gimmick.
That's funny. That's true.
Yeah.
Well, I guess there was a need for something like that.
Friends.
I didn't realize that I was going to go up there and be made part of Rip Oliver's clan, which was, which really didn't seem like, the clan didn't seem like an Arab would fit. But you know what? Rip made it fit, and I sure owe a lot to Rip Oliver. Talk to Mean Mike Miller occasionally. He still gives me a call now and then. Yeah, it worked out good for me. I brought that gimmick with me to other places as well.
How long did you stay in Portland there, Rocky?
Well, I was there off and on. I think my first time there I stayed about 18 to 20 months, and then I left. And where did I go? Oh, I went to Australia. We did the Australian circuit. I spent about a year there, and besides, I always had Japan, so I was gone for. Then I came back. I was back there like 3 times, and I think altogether I did spend about 3 years there. But it was over the course of several years. I'd be gone for a while and come back, and that kind of thing. They'd bring me in and bring me out.
Was that other? He was a bit of a oddball. He came up from Portland right around during that stretch. I know that he was a few cross paths with that Billy Jack.
Yes, Billy Jack was there when I was there. That's right. He was our top baby face.
He was with some other guy named Scott Ferris, who was. They were up here for a fair stretch, and then land on his feet with WWE for a while there, and Billy Jack doing that. Then he seemed to just drop out of sight. I kind of lost track of him since then. I never quite knew what happened to him.
He came back here and started up a rival promotion to Don's Fed, and I think, Rocky, you were around during that time maybe when Billy started the OWF.
I was around at that time, and he started it without a television station, and whatever money he made in New York, I believe he lost it when he tried to start his own promotion, unfortunately. And I've heard some rumors now that he's hit Skid Row, unfortunately. I don't like to
I've heard that
say anything bad about Billy. He was always really nice to me, and I had some good matches with him, but from what I understand, he's not doing well. He was a talented guy. He was quirky, though. He was a quirky guy. Let's face it, professional wrestling is an industry for quirky guys anyway. So he fit right in there with the rest of us quirky guys. But he was definitely
quirky. in a working sense, but you can't be quirky with the boys.
Right. Yeah. When he left for New York, he created a big vacuum because we had built our whole program around him, and he was our top baby face. And then when he left, David Sierra stepped up to the plate, and he switched baby face, and tried to keep the ticket sales up and all. So
now, who was booking during your time here, Rocky?
Well, I was there for two different bookers. When I first got there, it was Rip Oliver, and then later on it became Lynn Denton. He came out there as the grappler after Rip Oliver left, and he had a short-lived career in New York. And then he tried to come back, but there was some heat there with Matt Bourne and this and that. So they brought in the grappler to take over the book there for the territory, and he did a hell of a good job as well. Very, very talented himself and a lot of great ideas.
I have a caller from area code 337. Tell us your name and welcome to Hart Beat Radio.
Calling from Louisiana. I'm calling to talk to Buddha Dean. This is the gorgeous one.
Oh,
gorgeous Joey Jackson.
Gorgeous Joey Jackson.
Yes.
Wow, what a nice surprise to hear that. Wow, that is really, really nice to hear your voice, Joey. You sound the same.
How you doing, brother? It's been a long time.
Good, my friend. Good. I just saw some of the boys, Moretti and Grappler and Santana and David. We were all at the Cauliflower Club last month there. And
man, I missed it this year.
Yeah, gosh, I thought of you. I brought your name up. I wish you were there. I didn't realize. Have you gone in years past?
Yeah, I went the year before.
Oh, shoot, I'm sorry I missed you there. Well, we honored David this year. I heard you became very successful in the carpet industry. You're a multimillionaire now. That's what all the boys tell me.
Yeah, not a multimillionaire, but I'm doing okay.
Wow, well, good for you, man. We had some great times up there, and the grappler. I saw him at the thing, and I know you broke in with grappler. Didn't he break you into the business?
Yes,
right.
Yes, he sure did, yes.
I tell you, man, gorgeous Joey Jackson, he had those gals lined up around the building there, man. you sold more than your share of tickets up in that territory, my friend.
I had a lot of good mentors, though.
Oh, man, we had that was great up there. And then do you have a family now, gorgeous?
Oh, yes.
Good for you. Didn't you marry a girl from the Pacific Northwest? If I recall, didn't you marry a girl from up there?
That's why my bookings went down. That's why my bookings went down.
That's funny.
Don said, don't marry nobody from Portland.
Yeah, and whatever you do, don't buy a house. Don't homestead the territory.
Yeah. And we're still married.
Oh, good for you. I figured you would be. Well, I remember you and your wife came out here to Hawaii and visited my wife and I all those years ago. And you're still in the carpet industry, is that correct?
Yes, sir. Sure am.
Wow. Good for you. Well, I knew that whatever you were going to do, you were going to be successful at it. Whether you stayed in the business or whether whatever life held for you, I knew that success was also going to be a big part of it.
Yeah, I had found spinning out back. I went help Lenny and Dave with that Paragon deal in Vegas for a while.
Okay.
And WCWC in Portland, I helped out for a while for there, but it was hard on me all that travel. I'm not getting no younger.
Right. Well, yeah. I'm disabled, and I'm on my.
Oh, really?
My legs are gone. The hips. I'm bone on bone everywhere. Right, hips, knees, ankles. They're all gone, so, but I'm not in the chair. I can still walk. What a hell of a body you had in those days, man. You used to watch your food, train hard, and, boy, that was, So what I'm doing now is, here in Hawaii, I'm actually the chairman of the Re-elect Donald Trump campaign. I work for Donald Trump. I do all his stuff here in the state of Hawaii. So
cool deal.
Yeah, it keeps me busy, you know, and there's a, you know, hopefully that, you know, when he's done saving this country, he's got 7 more years to save us. Hopefully he'll go up north and he'll help the Canadians put their country back together. You know, I don't know what his plans are as far as that, but I know that that it's given me a great position here in the islands, you know, and I'm just happy to be attached to someone, you know, I think probably the greatest president that the country's ever had.
Amen.
Cool deal.
Yeah.
Now, I want to ask, Rocky, is it difficult to be a conservative living in liberal Hawaii?
Well, you know, this is a blue state, but you know, I can point out, and there is some heat to that. You're right. I am in the minority here, but you know, it's pretty obvious to everyone out here that, you know, climate change is a hoax, and I mean, it's obvious. It's nice here in the Hawaiian Islands every day. So, you know, even though, you know, I might find myself on the other side of the 8 ball, you know, I can prove that, you know, Mr. Trump's accusations, everything is true, and it's helped a lot. And, you know, we're trying to get Hawaii in line. We're trying to bring Hawaii over to the good side. And it's a long uphill battle, but I've been doing my best.
Oh,
yeah.
Love it.
Well, you know, I just want to let this out there. A lot of people in America, I don't know about Canada, but they can't handle the truth, you know, and they don't deserve the truth. And that's why, you know, I believe that, you know, our president only tells people so much. He has to tell them what they can handle and nothing more. So, you know, we've got to keep that in mind, that, you know, it's for the best of the nation. And we just have to follow along and trust that things are going to work out, and they already have, and it's only going to get better.
Are you looking at a run for office over there anytime, Rocky?
Well, I'm thinking about it. Believe me, the Trump people have talked to me about it. They want to back me. They want to put some money behind me, behind my campaign. And, you know, I've told them that I'd be willing to do that. I'm just happy to have a mentor, you know, as great as the one I got. And like I say, you know, not only are we going to get this country in shape, but, you know, Donald Trump is also, he's a man who knows how to treat women. So, you know, that if we can get the woman's vote, we got more than half the votes of the nation, and I think that's, you know, that's is going to be our key to success.
And he's a WWE Hall of Famer, so you know you can trust him.
Well, and you know what? He's going to shave Comey's head, that James Comey, that lion snake. He's going to, you know, I'd like to see a hair match between those two, and I'd like to see that Comey get his head shaved. And all I can tell you is Trump's got big things planned for Canada. You know, he's already talking about making Canada the 51st state, because we know that the Canadians, you know, they really want to be part of America. They'd love to be the 51st state, and I think Donald Trump is willing to make that happen if they play their cards right. And I think that, you know, their dreams are going to come true here. And like I say, it's gonna work out well for everybody.
Is Obama still got his mansion down in Hawaii too, or you hook up with him too?
Well, you know, there's a lot of tree huggers and there's a lot of bleeding heart liberals here, and Obama, you know, he's looked at as a saint over here. I think they're going to try to, you know, get him in sainthood or something. But you know, the truth is coming out slowly but surely. And, you know, we'll just, you know, he's, you know, 8 years of lies about this phony climate change stuff, 8 years of lies about all this other stuff. And he's brainwashed people, Obama has. So it's going to take Trump some time to get people, you know, to get them off that, to clear their minds of all that stuff that they've been inundated with. So I'm
here to help convert him from Obama to Osama.
Listen, I got a caller from Harold in Mississauga, Ontario, and this is for Don. Of all the 3 guys that you wrestled, Bob Backlund, Hulk Hogan, and Pedro Morales, who was, in your opinion, the best of those 3?
I don't know if you can classify the best. The Hulk was certainly in his time. The Hulk was the biggest thing to hit pro wrestling since Gorgeous George. So the Hulk was, and then Bob Backlund was a fine technician. Everybody's different. I mean, there's a lot of good, great, bad matches, and you go to different people's personalities. So to call one or the other the best, would have to. Maybe I've had a couple things that I've considered the best, and I can't recall that many. But but to call one person the best, Hulk had his thing, 15, 20 minutes of fire and brimstone, and it was over. Then Bob Backlund was a longer, more athletic, more type, and then Pedro was a give and take, and another 15, 20 minutes of fire.
Yeah, all different styles for sure.
Yeah.
Backlund and Hogan were almost like polar opposites as far as style goes.
Yeah. So I don't know if you could say best. Enjoy working with one more than the other. I don't know. Maybe Hulk because that was getting closer to the real big bucks time. But as far as being best, it's just trying to pick out my favorite fruit or meal or something. There's a lot of they're all good.
I think there was a cage match with Jimmy Snuka and yourself, and that was kind of the catalyst to Mick Foley.
October 17th, 1983.
Yeah, I know. Whenever I've been with Mick, he always expressed his high regard for Don Muraco. He always told me Don was one of the guys that was his biggest inspiration. So,
well, that's a compliment coming from him. He's done a lot with his not only with his wrestling career but with his life. As bad as my body is, I hate to think of what his body's going to be like in another 10 years, because that guy's done some, back to things off the apron onto the cement, and diving off stages.
And they almost become victims.
I still say he's the guy that got The Rock over when the Rock got over as a heel. He's the one. That match with him when he was handcuffed behind his back like a fool, and The Rock was swinging away with that chair on his head. It was just, I don't know how many, he must have hit him 20 times in the head with the chair. And it was, it was a pay-per-view, and The Rock wasn't holding back, and he kept putting his head out there. And I think that's what people go, whoa, wrestling's real. That was, that moment there. I think I use that. I think it's the turning point of The Rock's career when he just A-rodded Mankind's head and just planted that guy. He was just swinging for the fences.
Isn't it odd that both of those guys owe their credit to Don Muraco?
Well, I don't know about that.
Well, did you ever hang with
I never
Dwayne
stuck my head out for that many chairs in my life.
Did you ever hang, Don, with The Rock down in? I know you were down there.
I know him. When you were down here, you guys were around. He was a spoiled.
Well, I remember him all the time up at the Chateau Blue, that apartment in Honolulu with Leah and Peter and.
He was a spoiled little wiener boy.
He had a bad haircut. It was about a foot high, a big afro, and was.
Yeah.
And Leah was always screaming at him to shut up, and Rocky was in there.
He was Leah's baby, though. He was.
Yeah, and Leah was kind of. I remember all kinds of insanity going on there with Peter and Leah
and
Rocky and all in one place. Yeah, that
was a Chateau Circus.
yeah, that was.
But I know him. We lived in the same complex when we first moved into Connecticut, and I was there on the road all the time. Rocky and myself and my wife and Otto are close friends, and they keep. So he was around, and my daughter was just born, so he was like a babysitter almost. He was doing the Elvis stuff.
Otto was like the breath of fresh air in that, as Leo was always borderline psychotic, and Peter was, fading on. Otto was a sweetheart, and I remember Rocky had a stretch up here playing football too with the Calgary Stampeders, and
right, yeah, he had a bad leg.
He said if he had been a little bit better at football, would have been the worst thing that ever happened to him. So I think he got cut and then ended up, kind of going full bore into the wrestling with Vince and took off from there. But
what a talent, huh?
Yeah, and it seemed like he's still got his head on, the right way. He gives
me a lot of respect. I guess he took a lot from Peter. I see a lot of Peter in him. That WrestleMania match he had with Hogan, it was unnecessary, but he made something out of it.
Well, he sure got his looks from his grandfather. I tell you what, there was a impressive guy to look at, and so's the grandson. Good-looking family, those Maivias.
Yeah, they were good. I always enjoyed Peter, especially. He was pretty reminded me a lot of Stu. Kind of old school.
Did he work up in Calgary?
Yeah, he had all kinds of common denomination with my dad. With I think he had sent a lot of those Afa and Sikas and guys like that up here, and
did he come to Calgary from England?
Yeah, he was a friend of that other old shooter that we had on last week. His wife, Luther Lindsay, he was pretty good friends of him, and at one time he was good friends with Billy Robinson until they had that big fight in Japan, and I think Peter bit part of Billy's face off or something like that.
Yeah, he was. He went to England. I guess he was about 220. He told me he went to Robinson, those guys there. They beat the hell out of him, and then he went with Stu. And
he was
was down in the dungeon and put on about 60, 70 pounds, and he went back to England.
I think he originally. I know he worked with that old Steve Rickard, and then they became mortal enemies later on. But he was down in New Zealand with Rickard and that bunch. And
that's how he took over this. That's how he got Hawaii from Rickard.
Yeah, they had some. I remember some death threats and all that stuff where Leo was telling Steve Rickard if he ever returned to Hawaii that the chief was going to kill him or something like that. So, I remember it was all totally dysfunctional, total insanity at that apartment down in Chateau Bleu or whatever the hell, but it was always always something going on there, with Peter Leah and company, But
they had the guy from the Minnesota Wrecking Crew out here helping him, Lars Anderson. He was out here helping Leah.
Oh yeah, he was a bit.
After
kind of a loose cannon thing going on there. I never knew what the hell was going on there with him too. He seemed to insert himself into the equation, and it was like the Rocky Horror Show or something. That whole thing. I remember riots and death threats and knifings and all kinds of stuff at the shows. It's almost like the norm.
And it ended up in court.
I don't recall the crowds were all that good. That's
no.
The payoffs were
few and far between.
Yeah.
When you were young and growing up there on the islands, did you watch wrestling? I mean, I'm sure you did, Rocky. But Don, did you have an interest in pro wrestling when you were a kid?
Oh, we had the greatest show in the world over here with Ed Francis and Johnny Baran and Ripper Collins and Curtis. It was an hour 30-minute show. They had 2 matches, maybe a total of 12 minutes, 15 minutes at the most wrestling, and the rest was promos and gimmicks. Johnny, it was way before Vince, 25 years before Vince even. Johnny Bryan was coming out of coffins, and Curtis was, Curtis had free run doing his promo with his back to the camera. Fuji and Ripper Collins was insulting the Hawaiian, and he had the perfect demeanor. He was one of those Southern, anti, you know what I'm talking about, Howley guys that people just hated, He just fit right into the. Yeah, he just fit right into the mold.
Howley and Mahalo, or.
Yeah.
I remember Dutch Savage played a big part in that. If I recall correctly, I think a lot of those ideas came out of Dutch Savage. Don might remember that better than I do. But how big of a role did Dutch play in the angles back then, Don?
In Hawaii?
Yeah, for some reason I thought that Dutch Savage played a big part of the angles here, guiding the.
Maybe much later, but not when Ed was around. When Ed was around, it was Ed and Tally Ho, and actually Curtis was going to Australia and Japan. So they had a market because they'd have a cycle of guys coming back from Japan and Australia that wanted to stay in Hawaii for a couple of weeks. So when their big show would have every major talent, Bruno Sammartino, Carpentier, this guy, that guy, all the top guys in Calgary or top guys from wherever coming back.
That was like the big bonus. That was the big bonus of going to Japan, is you got a 2-3 week stint in Hawaii on the way back, and everyone would. I heard the payoffs were pretty good with Francis and all. It was almost like guys were clamoring to get in there. Like a lot of guys couldn't crack the roster in there because they had all the big stars coming back or going to Japan, and they'd always stop on the way back. And
where was the office based out of? When all the Howleys would come in, where did they all stay and work out of?
I thought it was the Ambassador Hotel or something. That was what I recall.
No, that was later with Steve Ricard. They at the Hawaiian King Hotel, because Lee Blears was the manager there, and they had little studios there where they could cook breakfast or a room or something. And if you had your kids, the guys who were staying a long time would stay there, and even the guys going through Lee Blears it was a Hawaiian King Hotel back by the mini golf at the time, and they all stayed. They stayed there, but yeah, they had guys come in. And a lot of guys would weren't even worried about payoff, because if they got a payoff, they would write the trip off on their taxes. It was a tax deal coming back from Japan.
And did Ed have a private little shuttle that you guys would take from island to island, or how did that all work?
We flew on the local airlines for a while, and then after a while, Russ was a pilot, and he tried to. One of his business enterprises was in charter plane. We went with the McGuires one time. We were going inter island. Yeah, those guys. That was a riot, because they United, or I think it was Hawaiian that we flew. They'd let the boys on earlier, and me and Steve Sotelo were sitting there, and we saw the McGuire Twins, and they couldn't climb the stairs. So they put them on a chair, and they loaded them into those dipsy dumpsters that they used to bring the food up. So they lifted them up to the fork. They lifted them up with forklifts, and they came in through the kitchen door. Oh God, Steve Strong and I, we were just crying. We just had tears rolling down our face. It was the funniest thing. Those two guys sitting in the garbage bin and getting lifted up to the airline because he couldn't make it up the stairs. Oh, it was incredible.
I remember we had the McGuires up here, Don, and my dad had to rent a damn school bus to take them because they're too damn. They couldn't fit in anyone's car, and then the fan belt broke on the car, and we had a dead battery, and we used a shoelace to try to make a makeshift fan belt, and we kept trying to push and pop the clutch, and we finally had to tell the McGuires to get the hell out because it was too heavy to push, and so we pushed and popped for about a mile, and finally got somebody to tow us in. This is like at 4 a.m, and we got into some truck stop about 40 miles down the road and had to wait till they were coming in, and we were at this truck stop, and all these truckers were coming in. They were like they had seen a spaceship land or something. And they're all saying, "Did you see those two identical big fat twins or whatever the hell?" You know.
Oh God, you have to be involved with those guys to know what's going on.
Yeah,
I remember when I worked the 6-man tag. I was a baby face. And they were my partners. And with Larry Sharp, Fuji, and Kamaka we were working with. So Larry Sharp would do this thing, like go to lock up, and then and then back. Well, no, I'm afraid, And he'd doing it 3 and 4 times, and the guy was blowing up. He just, from trying to follow Larry around the ring, Oh, come on, Larry, you're killing me, Larry. And then he'd lock up, and he'd beg off. Oh, those guys. And then he rolled out of the ring, and his stomach got caught on the bottom on the apron, and he was there, and he was choking to death because his stomach had blown up to his throat, and he was choking to death. Help me, Billy! I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. And the brother runs over and kicks him in the stomach about 4 or 5 times till his stomach popped off the edge of the apron, and he could breathe again. Those guys are some of the highlights. One of the highlights.
I remember my dad had them in a battle royal up here with Andre the Giant, and Andre wouldn't touch either one of them, and Andre was making it like they were freaks and he wasn't, And
oh God.
I remember I had to go pick them up at the hotel one time, and I went and knocked on the door, and I opened it up, and they had these damn newspapers on the floor, and I guess they couldn't sit on a toilet or something, so they would just shit on the newspapers. And I was like 4 or 5 of those on the floor coming in. It's like it smelled like an outhouse in a hotel, Or,
oh my God, those old day stories are nobody would believe them. Nobody's gonna believe that stuff. Oh, jeez. But I know it's true. Ed Francis was carrying buckets of shit in Molokai because they couldn't make it to the. They had him in a camper out in the back because that again was up the stairs with a little little flight of stairs where the locker room was. So they couldn't there, so they had to throw him in a little motorhome type thing. Oh God! And that's where they couldn't fit in the bathroom. It just turned to a shitty interview. Oh my God! They had two hookers that, believe it or not, that traveled with them. That did their, I guess, whatever business, picked up their newspapers or whatever, and they were they were classics. I got about half a dozen stories of those clowns. Jesus.
Whatever happened to all the old videotape television shows from Hawaii? Are any of them still in existence?
Phil Arnone would be the guy, and they kept them on those big reels, those big TV reels, and whether they have them or not, I think they're probably destroyed.
Oh, that's too bad.
That was probably a studio show, not like from the live shows, or.
So they'd have a studio show on Saturday. It'd be right inside the TV station. And that was the hour-and-a-half show. that they had, like 15 minutes of wrestling on, and the rest was promos, because they had the greatest interview guys. And then they had a Friday night show that was taped from the house shows that they put together, and they throw insert interviews. They were way ahead of their time. They're years and years.
Lord Blears was a TV commentator for a while, wasn't he? Or?
Right, yeah, for 20, 30 years.
I heard he did a hell of a job.
Beginning.
I never ever actually heard it, but I remember everyone used to rave about him being a great interviewer or something like that.
Yeah.
It's Bob here. I got a young guy here from Winnipeg that wanted Jordan.
I thought it was Donald Trump.
Yeah, I thought it was Donald Trump, but it's Jay from Winnipeg, and he wanted to ask Don a couple of questions.
Indeed, excellent. Thank you. It's great to be live on the air here. It's an honor. And Don, just a few questions. A lot of memories from me watching Stampede Wrestling was in 1988 when you defeated Mackham Singh to win the Stampede North American Championship. Kind of share that memory with us. Like, that's definitely a cool moment in the history of Stampede Wrestling, and it would be kind of cool to hear your insight on it.
Well, it was my first time not with the WWF going into Calgary. It was exciting, it was beautiful to be up there. It was it wasn't winter time. I think it was I forget the date, but it was towards the summer, and I stayed with Davey Boy and Diana out of their place, and you could see Banff from where I live. So it was really spectacular.
Awesome. And, kind of looking at the wrestling business right now from a standpoint where people like me are new to the business, paying my dues and kind of early in the training process, what kind of advice do you have to young people trying to make a name for themselves?
Advice? Should I save your money?
Yeah.
Be careful of those bumps they're taking, because they're taking some wild and crazy bumps. My son sent me something from Japan or something the other day. The guy put like a huge 6-foot cylinder on the guy and then jumped off the top rope, and the thing just exploded. Glass all over the place, and he covered him and he kicked out. Oh my God! So yeah, don't get any of those promotions. Cause that would be my best. That'd be my best advice. Go ahead and take the beatings at the places like the Dungeons or down in South Florida where they do the 500 squats and stuff like that. Because it's good training and it's good, good conditioning.
Did they ever put you through any of that, Don, or did they ever put you through any of that? You're always in pretty good shape anyway, but I remember that was kind of the
I didn't. I came in blind. Before I didn't. They had nothing. But Curtis used to say you used to be invited into the business. That was his, in our time. He says, anybody could get in now. He says back in those days you had to be invited. So yeah, but I never got through. I learned on the fly kind of because there was nobody. Bud Rattel, an old timer in Vancouver.
Oh, he was a half tough old bastard. I heard a bit of a shooting.
Yeah, hell yeah. It didn't look like much, but yeah.
He started another guy that he sent out here from there, a guy named Buddy Roberts at Dale Hay or whatever, the Freebirds or whatever.
Yeah. I was in Japan with him.
Before I do go, just your current take on the wrestling product today. What do you kind of look towards it as?
I think Roman Reigns is going to jump into the John Cena spot. He looks reliable and can do jobs and come back and go back and forth. And then they all look solid now. It looks like a solid group. They got some workers there. I don't know why they're pushing that the small guy, because he doesn't know how to sell.
There's a few that you just kind of scratch your head and assume that they're kissing somebody's ass or something. But
yeah. The four big guys I like, Samoa Joe and Roman Reigns and the other guy.
Rollins isn't bad. And
Wyatt. He's Mike Rotundo's son. Rotundo, he got what genes? Rotundo's and Wyndham is his mother.
Yeah.
So I like him.
They seem like they're throwbacks to old school a bit, and I find they do a bit too much gimmicks.
Yeah,
but
it's
I think their big problem is they got too many cooks in the kitchen down there, and they got one guy pushing for extreme,
exactly.
and somebody else wanting to have divas, and somebody else wanting to have shoot fighting and all the other. It's a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of cooks in the soup.
There's a young man wrestling down in the WWE right now on SmackDown who wrestled up here in Calgary. He's actually from here, Jinder Mahal. But he worked with
that
Bruce
guy,
and
yeah.
Rock
He looks
up
great,
here.
huh?
Yeah, I think his uncle was up here when you were up here, Don, a guy named Great Gamma.
I thought he might have been related to Jeet Singh, but yeah, I had no idea. Yeah, guy looks good.
He was up here part of that thing with Mike Shaw, Muckam Singh or whatever. He was the part of that Karachi Vice thing, but he grew up here. He was right around that time. I think he was probably at the matches when you won the title up here from Muckam Singh. And I think with all the ISIS stuff going on, he's become a bit like Cosmo.
They don't want to put any heat on a Muslim, but as long as the guy's got a turban on, that's close enough.
Yeah, a bit like kind of a throwback to Khosrow, And
Yeah.
Was Khosrow kicking around when you were in WWE or WWF, Don? Was he still around then?
Oh yeah, I broke him. He was in that Ric Flair class I helped break in with Billy Robinson. He was there. He was about 185 pounds. He wasn't the world's greatest worker, but his timing was, he came around. He came at the right time, with Iran, and he was actually, he was truly a bodyguard for the Shah. All those Olympic guys, all those athletes from those countries went into the army, and he became, he was a personal bodyguard for the Shah.
I remember he telling me.
Didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't do nothing.
When he was up here, he was always telling us that he had, all these wild stories about the Shah, and he at that time claimed that the Ayatollah was, would kill him if he found out where he was and all this stupid stuff, But it's funny, that other guy, he was down in Hawaii with you, Don, Adnan Al-Casey, or Billy White Wolf that time. But
it's funny how those two guys blew everybody in Hawaii's mind.
Yeah.
Everybody was sold that he was an Indian. People still to this day can't believe he's an Iraqi. He was over.
It's funny how those two guys kind of were reborn as top heels 10 years after they'd been kind of run the gamut as nondescript baby faces.
Yeah,
Billy White Wolf was huge up here in Portland. Was he? I know he was pretty big over there in Hawaii too, wasn't he?
Huge.
That's what I thought.
Huge in Hawaii for his stuff. Curtis,
I think he actually got paid. I think he got $2 a week more than the rest of us got down there, which is like $10 or something,
He dated like 2 or 3 Miss Hawaii or something.
Get paid. He still lives here. He lives at the Marco Polo. He has a place over here. Yeah.
He was supposed to be an old shooter as well, old Billy White Wolf. My dad told me from Oklahoma State.
Casey. He was before Jack. He was before Jack, Oklahoma State.
Yeah, you'd never know it because he never tried to stretch anyone that I know of. He's always pretty easy going.
No. I used to run Diamond Head and stuff with him. Damn, he would bury me. Yeah, he was an athlete, and then he played racquetball down at the beach or handball down at the beach. He was a hell of an athlete. He got that Ray Stevens grip, and he never wanted to let it go. The old Ripper Collins handshake, and that was, this is a brand new world. Yeah, this beats getting my neck stretched.
Were you ever around Steamboat much? Steamboat was never. Yeah, he was never
I did a big
Hawaiian guy.
Him. No, he's from Richard Blood from North Carolina, I think.
Yeah, most people think he was a Hawaiian. I didn't recall him ever being there, but
Dean Higuchi gave him that Steamboat name.
Is that right? I remember the other guy. He was probably down there when you were down there, Don. That old Sammy Steamboat.
Yeah. Well, he was. That's original.
I think he was a crony
original
of
Beach Boys. Yeah.
Peter Maivias.
He went over here, and then Des got his hands on him. Des got a hold of Sammy, and then took him on the road. He was. I guess Sammy was a rugged guy. And Des took him, and then he ended up with Eddie Graham for a long time, and then came back here and retired here. I think he only worked with Des around St. Louis and on Dez's cards. I think he went around and backed Des up, and then he worked for Eddie.
Des always spoke very well of him. I don't recall ever seeing him work, but Lou always was speaking great things about Sammy Steamboat. And
yeah, I think that was another tally ho. Hooked him up on the beach. He was a beach boy. His dad was one of the original Waikiki Beach Boys, the whole family. They're still down there today. And Des was coming through from Japan or something, and Tally Ho hooked him up, and he saw Sammy, Sammy looked like he was an athlete, He was about 220, 225, then paddling canoes, surfing, doing whatever, and just running. And then as before his ears got like that, then Des got a hold of him for a couple of years, and then he was Des's protege for several years. Then he went in, I don't know if he was partners or what, but then he was in Florida with Eddie. And then Tennessee, too. He's with that the Welsh Gossett connection down south. And then he came back here. He was a heavy hand, but, very, very quiet about it.
Do we still got Rocky on the line here?
I'm still here. Remember my time with Steamboat. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about your time down there back in, '89 when you went to Puerto Rico, teamed up with Rip Rogers for a while down there. How did Puerto Rico compare with Hawaii?
Oh, Puerto Rico is a dangerous place. It was very different, from Hawaii. Very, very different.
Bruiser Brody can attest.
Yeah. It's a rugged place down there. The not only the fans, but the other guys too. It was doing good when I was there. Victor Quinones brought me in there, and David Sierra, both of them, two good friends of mine. They both brought me in there, and it was business was great at the time. Steve DeSalvo was there with us, and one of the Samoans, Alpha's boy, was there, and the guy from Canada was there, Phil LaFleur. And we had a good crew. Yeah, we had a really good crew there, and the business was great at that time. And
did it run just like a regular territory? They just worked around the country?
Yeah. I think there's 73 towns in Puerto Rico, and we worked every one of them. I was there for over a year, almost 2 years there, and I had a really, really good time there. Pretty good run there, and I liked it. I liked it there. It was the weather was like Hawaii, and it was a warm-blooded place there. Really good. I actually married there. I got married in Puerto Rico.
I know my dad
compared to Japan and Hawaii, which of the three would you say is the best island to work on if you had to live in one place for a year or two and work?
Puerto Rico, Japan, or Hawaii? Is that the three choices? Japan. I like Japan. I married a girl from Japan. And the crowds in Japan were big. The money was, obviously bigger than anywhere else for me. And I just liked Japan. I liked the style of work, and I just liked everything about it.
And is it true you opened a catamaran business there in Hawaii after you retired?
That's correct. I took some of the money I'd made in the business, and I bought into a small business here in Hawaii, and I kind of, rode with the economy, was on the upswing at that time, and that's how I was able to retire now. That's why I'm retired today. I sold that business in 2014, and was able to make my exit from the working world.
How old are you? 60, 58?
I'm 57. Just 57 in May. Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there many of the boys retired to Hawaii, Rocky, or is there?
No, a couple guys are out here. The guy who was Snooka's protege, Metal Maniac, he's here. I believe Lars Anderson is still here, as far as I know. And, obviously Don and I can't really... Oh, we got the kid from my nephew, Mauna Kea, who spent his whole career in Japan. But he of course, lives out here now. And I can't really think of anyone else.
Yeah, so
Johnny Walker and Neff are still kicking.
Oh, Johnny Walker, yeah, that's right, Mr. Wrestling.
And Neff.
Yeah.
And Neff. And White Wolf.
How old is
White Wolf, of course.
I had him on my show last year, old Johnny Walker, Mr. Rubberman Johnny Walker. He's got to be getting on a bit, eh?
Yeah.
Been around.
Yeah.
I think he worked for us in the 50s, so I don't know how old that makes him. But yeah, he's a pretty good old guy, Johnny, the Mr. Wrestling or whatever,
Rocky, I got another question for you. What is the wildest story you are able to tell legally about the Bomber in Milwaukee?
Oh my God, the Bomber, boy! They'd have a parade around there every night we get home, especially on Saturdays, right? And it was just the gals there in Portland. I never seen anything like it for ring rats. I mean, that place was just unbelievable. And they'd drive around in a circle until you'd open your door and you just point to one of the cars, and they'd pull right over. And I was in there with Bobby Jaggers, lived there when I was there, and oh God, we had a wild crew in there. Al Madrill was there with us, and Matt Bourne, of course, and it was a wild place to be, and it was fun to be there, and that was a story all by itself. Just that Bomber. If those walls could talk, we'd all be in prison.
What was Al Madrill like?
Oh, but you know what? A great guy, soft-spoken. I remember him as being soft-spoken. I think it was when I was there with Al. It was deep into his career. He was, I don't know how old he was at the time, but he was already well into it by then. And just I remember him as just being the easygoing guy. He always liked to cook. He'd always invite us over for lunch. He'd always make some good Mexican dish. And, me and Jaggers and whoever else was around, we'd always go to Al's place for lunch to eat.
Was that old Elton Owens? Did you ever interact with him much, Rocky? Or?
Who's that?
Elton.
Oh yeah, Elton was. Yeah, he'd show up at the shows, especially certain towns. I remember him coming to Eugene a lot, and then Sandy Barr, Jesse's dad. He ran Salem. And,
I remember.
Yeah, right. Elton would show up a lot. Yeah. He was a funny guy. I remember one night he forgot his cigar in the dressing room, and Buddy Rose picked it up. And I'm not going to tell you what Buddy Rose did with it, but you guys can imagine. And when Elton came back in, he took that cigar and stuck it back in his mouth, and boy, the place went nuts.
Used it as some kind of proctology.
I remember Lonnie Maine doing that when I first broke in the business back in the 70s. Anytime he left his cigar, he would walk away and leave. I'm surprised he never got STD or anything. He would go up to the box office to steal money, and they would do the most ungodly things to a cigar. He'd come back up, pick it off the table, and stick it right back in his mouth.
I'd heard that story. I know
not a story. It's not a story. It goes generate. If Rocky's there, that's probably 5 or 6 generations after me, and I don't know how long before that it had perpetuated.
I heard we had an
itself.
a well-known degenerate named Don Fargo up here, and he claimed that he had done that with Elton Owen's cigar and shoved it halfway up his ass, and Elton was, yeah.
I know Fargo fairly, and I could just say I know so many other people have done it. I doubt it's a claim.
Rocky, do you have any memories of a gentleman named Scott Peterson who teamed with Steve Dahl in the Southern Rockers here in Portland? This is probably the hottest tag team of the 80s in Portland.
Yes, they were, right, the Southern Rockers. And, Scott Peterson, I think he's a cousin to the Max Payne. I believe they were related to somehow. Scott Peterson, a hell of a guy, and he went on vacation to go down to, I think he was from Sacramento, and he went back and he got in a car wreck or something like that and lost his life. But Scott was a hell of a guy. He was just a nice guy, and he was taken away from us too early. But then they brought in to replace him. They brought in Rex King to take his spot with Steve Dahl. I guess Rex King and Steve Dahl, they've all passed on as well, which is surprising.
Yeah, all 3 of those guys have passed away now.
That really surprises me because
they weren't that old.
No, they weren't that old, and they really took good care of themselves, especially Steve Dahl. God, he really, he watched everything he ate. He trained hard. He ate correctly.
What
another
happened
guy
to
that's
him?
gone, Brady Boone, another guy that really watched every bit of food that went into his body, and he's gone as well. It's just amazing that these guys took such good care of themselves and died at such a young age. And I don't know if we can blame that on steroid use, or I really don't know what the common denominator is there, but it certainly seems that way.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I never even, half the time I never even hear these guys have passed, and then I'll hear it like on the, just now I never even knew that Steve Dahl had passed. Yeah, unbelievable.
Well, speaking earlier of Billy Jack, I thought I'd read somewhere he had passed. I'm not sure. Maybe
no, he's still alive and kicking.
Oh, he is? Okay, good.
Is he actually kicking or just trying to kick?
Well, depends on your definition of kicking, I guess.
I heard he's out on Burnside Avenue. I heard he's one of those guys on Burnside who's, which is the Portland Skid Row, right? That's what I was told.
Yeah, he just kind of floats from, I think Mark's house to Mark's house, just kind of living that lifestyle. I've talked to him a few times, and it's just he's still trapped in 1988 mentally. And I mean, to him, Vince just screwed him over yesterday, and that whole story.
He was really a nice guy. He was really a good guy. He was in there with us.
Yeah, I remember he married the girl that we all used to go to the same bank in Tampa to cash our checks. And there was a girl that worked at the bank, a real nice-looking gal, and I believe that's the one he married. And I don't know if I took her to Portland with him, of course. I don't know if, probably not still married, but that's what I remember of Billy Jack. He and I just missed each other in the Florida territory.
What does he look like these days, Matt? I can only imagine.
Well, he's got a salt and pepper mullet and no teeth, and one eye that's got something wrong with one eye. And I couldn't quite see what it is. It's just kind of droopy a little bit. But he's still very sharp. Mentally he's very sharp, but I think just I'm talking about a guy that's he came back here and he got into cocaine, and who knows what else, probably pills after that. And he got involved with running drugs for a while for the mafia, the Mexican mafia, I believe. And
does he still have that great body? Because he had a phenomenal body. Is he still?
Oh, no, not at all. No, I mean, he's got a body like an old man.
Well, I was in the dressing room when Matt Bourne slapped the piss out of him, and I tell you what, because there was a lot of stuff about Billy Jack being a tough guy, this and that, and whatever. I don't know. I'm sure he was tougher than me, but I can remember Matt Bourne beating the hell out of him, and he sure didn't look very tough that night.
Yeah,
Matt Bourne was another wild one right there.
Yeah. He sure was. Matthew's dad and my dad were friends. So, Matthew and I had been friends since we were young boys, right?
Really?
And he was a wild guy.
What was Tony like?
Tony was a teddy bear. He was a great guy. He was really nice, and I don't know what he was like in his youth, but he was sure always treated me like an uncle. He treated me like he was my uncle, and man, he was just really great to me.
Yeah, I met him and Matt both. They both seemed like pretty straight up guys, and I don't know what happened at the end there, but he always seemed like a pretty decent guy.
Well, you remember what Buddy Rose did to the sister, to Matt's sister, and all that, and I thought they were going to kill Buddy and all that, and I
now, how much of that was a work and how much of that was a shoot? That's always been the question amongst people in Portland.
Yeah, it was a shoot. It was a shoot, and there was heat there, definitely.
I'd heard that Matt went over to his house to kick his ass, and Buddy invited him in and said, "Oh, let me make some coffee and let's talk, Matt." And
Buddy was a hard guy to stay mad at, because but I don't know. I'm sure it threw a wrench in that friendship. And, Buddy drew a lot of money there, so, with that alone came a lot of clout, right?
It's funny, most people don't remember it, but Buddy was the same class. He was in one of Vern's graduating classes, the same class as
he used to set up the ring.
Iron Sheik.
He set up the ring for George Godowski.
Yeah, he was called Paul Pershman at that time, and he was, he was supposed to come up with Cosrow, and I think they're trying to send Ric Flair up here at that same time. And
very talented. I thought he was very talented, right? That crybaby heel gimmick he sure drew a lot of money in wherever he went, right?
Yeah, I thought he was a hell of a worker, old Buddy. He had he got a bit kind of like Adrian Adonis, where he almost got too fat, but a pretty good handle, Buddy.
Yeah, before he got all wasted, he was a good hand. Before he even started working, I used to see him. He set up the ring for George Godowski back in Minneapolis, and we'd come in and he'd be working matches, doing Ray Stevens upside down bumps and doing all kinds of stuff. When he was Paul Pershman.
Who was running that training camp back then for Werner? Was that
pretty much Vern?
I remember Brad Reingens was supposed to be part of that, or I'm not sure if that was before or after.
Well, Vern would. Then he'd bring all these. And Billy Robinson was running that first one with Patera and the Sheik and Greg and those guys. But he'd bring up like George Scarpello would come up from Omaha. He'd bring them on a trip, or Danny Hodge. He'd bring guys through. He'd book guys for a couple of weeks up in, make them a payday, and then take them out to the ranch and have them stretch whoever was out there.
I've got a caller calling in. This is Smith Hart. Smith, welcome to Hart Beat Radio.
Yeah, you're very welcome, Bob. The first time I came to Hawaii, Lord Blears was raving about this young kid named Don Morrow. He was a diver and a surfer and pretty skinny. And I tried to find this Don Morrow, but I was only there for a day or a day and a half layover. And, I didn't realize how nice Hawaii was, or how nice, how lousy Canadian winters could be till I landed in Hawaii. And same thing on the way back. We couldn't find Don Morrow, the handsome young surfer, Samoan surfer or whatever, but Hawaiian. But I did meet you, Don, here and there in my travels. You know, and I know it's pretty hectic.
It's a certainly pleasure. Thank you for calling. I feel honored that you called in to say hello.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, thank you too, Don. You come a long ways, and you deserve every accolade you've ever achieved. And you know, I love you like a brother, not just a wrestling brother.
I don't know if you remember me, Smith, but this is Rocky now here talking. I think I met you. You were out here on your honeymoon. I forget the gal's name. I think you married a gal from Puerto Rico, and I think you guys were out here on your honeymoon, and I think that was the first time I'd met you. And I want to echo that with Don. It's a pleasure to hear your voice again, and I got good memories of you. That was many years ago, 30-some years ago, but I remember you as always a gentleman, as every member of your family that I've ever met. I can say the same about that. A family of true gentlemen, and probably the first family of Canadian wrestling.
Well, thank you very much for the kind words.
I'm glad you got a chance to come on the show, Smitty. Really honored and pleased that you took the time to give us a call today.
Yeah.
It means a lot, and appreciate it.
Yeah, we always made money with King Curtis, and I met Rocky later. We sort of picked up in Puerto Rico where we left off in Hawaii. And my wife, Maria, said what a nice guy Rocky was, what a gentleman he was. So, anyways, happy memories, and take care of you guys. I'll see you all too soon.
Okay, thanks very much, Smith, for calling in.
Thank you, Smith.
Aloha, brother.
Aloha, my brother.
God bless, Smitty.
Bye.
Thanks for the call. Much appreciated.
I got a text message from a friend of ours in Edmonton, Len Phillips. Which was your favorite manager, the Grand Wizard, Captain Lou Albano, or Mr. Fuji? And if you could also tell us a little bit about the Fuji Vice.
Well, actually, Fuji and I were old friends, all the way back to Hawaii. The Wizard was a special friend, and he was my first manager when I went to New York. And then Lou was Crazy Lou. He was a show all by himself. I mean, never can forget him at the King's dinner, sitting there with a lobster tail in his hand, dipping it in butter, and eating it. Drinking goblets of vodka. I mean, I don't know.
Probably the three.
Just like, who's your favorite champion, Backlund, Morales, or Hulk? It's kind of it's like a no-win question. A, B, C, maybe it's pretty much D, all of the above. The most time I spent was with Fuge. He and I spent the most time together, so we were probably the closest friends.
Those are probably the three most iconic managers in WWE history, those three. So it's kind of a sign of distinction that you were managed by all three of them. That kind of probably one of the very few that was managed by all three of those guys. So.
Each one very different.
What was your other question there, Bob?
Mr. Fuji had like a vignette thing called the Fuji Vice. It was
Fuji Vice. That all started
like
when
Miami Vice or something.
The Fuji Vice. They needed a couple guys to go. There was an old soap opera, Search for Tomorrow, that happened to be playing at the time. I think they canceled a couple years after. But we went down to that time, and it was a main event coming in. We were wrestling. I was wrestling Hogan in that city for the thing, and it turned out to be a week-long process. So that's when they had first came out with the Tuesday Night Titans, the TNT show with Lord Alfred and Vince, and it was like a Johnny Carson walk-around thing, and they had us make like, we could, we're ready for Hollywood. That was no, we're stars and everything. So, and then everything we did was just horrible stuff. We did a Fuji hospital and a Fuji Bandito, and then ended up with that Fuji Vice. And I ended up with a monologue. They never let us read they just let us look at the script. About 3 minutes before we went in.
The creative?
Idea being the worst. Vince pretty much and his crew there. But the idea of the whole thing is the worse it was, the better. And evidently it was really the better because it was horrible stuff. And I'm usually Fabulous Moolah was usually my love interest, which is kind of a downer, but it is what it is.
Was Vinny in charge when you first? When you first got to WWF? Was Vinny in charge, or was Vince Senior still running it back then? In what was that? 81?
Senior is still running.
And Pat
running the show. Pat was doing the commentary, and he was working a bit. I don't know if he was in booking or in the office or not yet. They didn't have an office. Vince pretty much used to run everything from his book, during the week, during Allentown and stuff. He would book all that stuff. I don't know who would sit down, but they had a crew. Whether Pat was involved at the time or not, I'm not sure.
Backlund was still the champion back then.
Yeah.
You worked with him quite a few times, didn't you? I heard you had like 60-minute Broadways and stuff like that with him.
Yeah, I always enjoyed it. I thought he was easy. He was easy to work with. He's strong as hell. There are guys that have more fire in their comeback, but he represented what they wanted, the company wanted at the time. He was like the John Cena of their era, and represented the belt, in that manner. And he was a good amateur wrestler. So we did 2 hours in one day, back to back, in Washington in the afternoon, and Philadelphia that evening. So that was kind of a milestone.
Wow.
If you could go back in time and spend a year of your life reliving a year of your career, what year would you choose?
We had great times in Florida when I was with Curtis and that group, and then there's years in between. I was in Florida. I was married. My whole career. I don't know if I had too many bad years that I was really depressed. A couple years in San Francisco where the money wasn't too great. Let it go to a couple downers. But
a year or two in Hawaii when the money wasn't too great either.
Yeah. I was usually on home, visiting home then. Wasn't looking for work in those days. But there's a lot of times where my runs through Florida, Australia, New Zealand. I had a good time. Of course, New York area, WWE. The early days of WWE before we went international. That was had some good times on the road. George Steele and Kurt Hennig and guys like that.
Now, Rocky, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about what was your gimmick over in Japan?
Well, I didn't really have a gimmick there because I broke in there, and of course they knew my father, and so no gimmick at all. Just me, just a young kid coming in, and no gimmick. In Japan in those days, for guys like me, the young boys, we were referred to. I heard they refer to that earlier. Yeah, none of us weren't allowed to have gimmicks, and I remember my first few matches there, I wasn't even allowed to hit the ropes. So it was it was on the mat wrestling, and any high spots was saved for the later later matches in the evening, and so no gimmick at all. Later on, when I went back years later, for Baba, they brought me in as a gimmick, under a hood or whatever. And later on I went back with a net, because that was kind of like the island thing. I had this throw net, and I used to throw the net and over my opponents and tie them up in my fishing net and of course start the heat out like that. So I didn't get a gimmick until years later in Japan.
What did you prefer working for, New Japan or All Japan?
I got out of a better position with All Japan. They're the ones who brought me back with the net gimmick and gave it a little push. It was hard to get off the ground when you come in as a young boy with the New Japan company. Once you get pigeonholed into that and you start out that way, it's really hard to break that mold. So
what about the War promotion over there? I know you worked for them for quite a while too.
Yeah, I worked for them, and I still am in touch with Tenryu, and Don and I actually went over there together for Tenryu later on, and that was had a good time with them, but the company wasn't doing the kind of business that Baba or Inoki had done.
And where did they run over there?
Well, they ran everywhere, War ran everywhere, Tokyo really, of course, but we ran the whole country. It's just, on a smaller budget. They brought in less gaijins, and everything was just downscaled. The money was a little bit less, the crowds were less, everything was less. But I still had a good time.
Did you work for any of those other indie promotions over there?
No, just those three guys. Inoki, Baba, and then finally Tenryu.
And you did a little tour with WWF, too, I think, of New Zealand, right?
That's right. I have Don to thank for that. That's right. He brought me down there with Dynamite and Johnny Boy, and we had a pretty good crew. I forget who, Larry Sharp and Chavo and Mundo, the Guerrero Boys. Yeah, we had a good crew down there. And then Don put that together and brought me in down there. I think we did 3 tours to New Zealand.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, Bushwhackers on that too?
I don't recall that they were. I remember Siva Afi was on it. I don't recall if they...
Yeah, Siva. I
don't think the Bushwhackers were.
How do fans over there compare to fans, say, like in Japan and in the mainland who are used to seeing wrestling, on a weekly basis? Is New Zealand's fans different when you go to those more rural places where they may not have local wrestling?
Yeah, I thought they were. In the business, the fans have a certain role to play. That they're part of the show as well in the States, right? And they know the fans know what their role is, and they're good at doing it. Where in New Zealand, they don't really know the role of the fan, And I think, as a result of that, it can be a little disconcerting. Sometimes it can be awkward if the fans don't play their role the way that they're expected to, or the way they do in the States, by being vocal and all that stuff. And how important that is, that the fans verbally get with the program and really make it a fun night for everyone involved, including the guys in the ring as well, right? So I think that was lacking in the Australia. I worked in Australia as well. I think it was lacking in both Australia and New Zealand.
He seemed somewhat subdued. I know he worked over there, and I remember one time a big Maori tried to hit the ring and got into a big brawl with my brother Keith. He was about twice as big as Keith. He looked like Umaga or something like that. I remember Steve Rickard giving Keith shit for leave the fans alone. He said he was, fighting for his life and hadn't done anything to start it. But it's kind of crazy. But
when Steve started that, they had 2 television stations, Channel 1 and Channel 2 in New Zealand, and it would show on a Sunday afternoon. I think they did like a 50 rating. The shows Rocky, where we bicycled those off the WWE. They had the WWE network going down there at the time, and I had just left, so they were still going, and then our third show died because some lady went down and they had it banned because the kids were putting each other to sleep and breaking each other's arm.
Don and Rocky, we'd love to have you guys come back and join us on a future show.
Anytime, just give me a call, Bob. I'm always available. Anything I can do.
Hello, everybody, Canada, U.S. Thank you for having me. Thanks, and thanks.
Give my regards to Donald Trump, Rocky. Yeah.
I will. I'll bring you up to date on the next time we speak. I'll tell you how we're moving forward. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Aloha to the great Hart family, and to you, Bob, and thanks everybody else up there in Canada. And I'll look forward to talking to you all soon.
If you want to see Rocky Iaukea in action, you can watch it along with the best of Hart Beat Radio at youtube.com/legitprowrestling. That's right. Go to youtube.com and just type in Portland Wrestling, and it'll pop right up. You can see Rocky Iaukea wrestling as a Buddha Dean. Probably his most successful run as a wrestler in the United States was right here in Portland, Oregon, where he was a 2-time tag team champion and a 3-time tag team champion and a 2-time television champion before returning to Japan and eventually going back to Hawaii. And you can also listen to the best of Hart Beat Radio at youtube.com/legitprowrestling. You can check out great photos of Stampede Wrestling at facebook.com/Stampede Wrestling. That's right. Just go to facebook.com and search for Stampede Wrestling. You'll see the Stampede logo with the 2 cartoon guys in the ring with the yellow ropes. Yep, you'll know what you're looking for then. And hopefully we can someday get Bruce to learn about the internet, because he'll love it. He'll love watching videos on YouTube, and he'll love interacting with fans on Facebook. I can't believe you're not doing it already, Bruce. You would love it. You would probably love it.
It's about teaching old dogs new tricks.
Yeah, and you can teach the new dogs some old tricks that they don't know.
Yeah.
Which is why they have to take all these bumps and don't get what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Walk down and take care of them all.